Relationships and Astrology, and this is our series on love and the planets, and we're looking at the week ahead. So I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin, of course, and
I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
I think they probably know us by now, but good just for new people. So Armand, what's your overview of kind of the week ahead?
You know, we had a new moon on Friday, and typically it takes a little while for the moon to get up and moving, but this week it gets moving very quickly. There's a lot of hot aspects Tuesday and really on through the first quarter moon on Friday. So I feel it's a very, very active week.
It really is. And Mercury seems to be doing quite a lot. So, it might be useful just to talk a little bit about what Mercury is, because he has such an important function in relationships, because of course he's the key to communication. And without communication, it's very hard to have a good relationship. And he's been traveling through Capricorn for a while, pretty close to Pluto. So Mercury in Capricorn is kind of a very practical, very concise Mercury. So communication is a little bit more cautious, maybe a little bit more careful, kind of very good at really kind of choosing words very carefully. But he's quite busy this week. I mean, the first thing he does is he squares Uranus in Aries, which of course is very dynamic, and Uranus very much about innovation and making changes and really moving forward very rapidly. So I'm really wondering if there's going to be midweek really some information, maybe some unexpected information, some sudden contacts from people, maybe somebody that you haven't seen for a while or talked to, and maybe just to be a little careful, because Uranus can also give some jolts. So just to watch how we communicate. So really to use that Mercury in Capricorn, in a cautious way, which it really likes to do. What do you think?
Mercury in Capricorn definitely wants to be careful. Uranus in Aries, not so much. And I think that there could be a lot of brilliant insights. There could be some, you could have really great thoughts, and you could even try to communicate them. But what I would worry about at midweek with that Uranus Mercury square is kind of you blurt something out and it's like, you know what I mean, but not necessarily. It's like from our own perspective, we may think that we know what we mean, but it's not necessarily the case that the other person is picking it out. You're right, though. Mercury and Capricorn ought to sort of slow things down a little bit and help to make it a little bit more precise.
And I think also because it's been near Pluto for so long, and I think of course now it's moving on, but there's also a little bit of a secretive quality to it, a little bit very private, and suddenly this Uranus coming along may jolt that privacy a little bit. So just to kind of be aware of that we might also feel our nervous system a little kind of angsty maybe midweek. And then of course it moves on to sextile Chiron in Pisces, and Chiron of course, which I think I would suggest anybody who's interested in Chiron to read Melanie Reinhardt's work and Zane Stein's work. There's a lot around about Chiron. And it's really about healing old wounding and also understanding things. So I'm wondering if with the Mercury sextile Chiron, there may be a little bit more understanding of relationship patterns, maybe a little bit more forgiveness also of maybe past wounding. Because of course, as much as we may love somebody, not wanting to unconsciously, we can also hurt them. In any relationship, there's going to be wounding somewhere along the way.
I would think that it's an opportunity. Last week had some very tough Venusian aspects. She was, she conjuncted Chiron, she squared Saturn. And I think maybe this is a little bit more of an opportunity to communicate and to do a little bit of the work of sharing and healing and maybe taking a little bit of a step back rather than, sort of just feeling that. Now you can sort of talk about what you feel. And that's with a very mercurial week, this is a time to communicate what you've been experiencing. Last week you experienced it. This week you can kind of talk about it.
So true. And with a Mercury in an earth sign, it might help to first write things out, maybe make some points or something, just kind of structure it a little bit so that then when it comes to communicating, it's a little bit more clear, because I think the Mercury in earth really appreciates that. But of course, then we've got our big one towards the end of the week, which is Venus moving into Aries, which is kind of really exciting because from floaty Pisces, where there's a little bit, there can be some escapism and Fantasyland or whatever, then it lands in Aries, which is really much more feisty and dynamic and fun-loving and, energetic. I mean, what do you think about the Venus in Aries?
Venus enters Aries on Friday, which is the day of the first quarter moon, and that's a very active time. It's a time when it's the time when you begin things, when you start putting your ideas out there into the world. It's a time for launching projects and beginning. And Venus moving into Aries entirely goes with that energy. It makes a lot of sense. And Venus goes into Aries. The first quarter moon is in Taurus, which is a little bit of a different, sort of more sensual vibe. So, I mean, if you take the energy that we'll see towards the weekend of maybe Friday night, Saturday, it looks like it could be really sort of outgoing fun, maybe get us out of the mire a little bit of all this Piscean energy. On the other hand, though, Margaret, I have to say that before Venus gets into Aries, she goes through the very end of Pisces, which is where she's perhaps most Piscean. So maybe Wednesday, Thursday, we could be sort of sinking back a little bit.
So true. You know, you're right, because of course it goes to that 29 degrees. And whenever anything hits 29 degrees, it's called a critical degree because it can have a push and pull feel about it. And, you know, just to remind listeners that, of course, Venus is Aphrodite in mythology, or that's one of her representations. So she's really one of the main planets to do with relationships, because she's all about our self-value and also what we value in somebody else, what we find beautiful, what we find attractive. So when she travels through the different signs, that's really the lens through which we value things more. So you're right. First, we've got to get through that 29 degrees. So maybe to watch out in relationships, to be a little bit more sensitive at that point. And then when she jumps into Aries, you know, there's much more of an adventurous quality, certainly fun loving. And it's also very good for friendships because Aries loves having friends around, love doing things with other people. But the one thing to remember with Venus in Aries is that although she loves excitement, she doesn't want drama. It's kind of, so really to remember there's a difference between the two. It's quite a simple sign, Aries. It really likes fun and enjoyment and things to be very direct and straightforward. No games, no kind of hidden dynamics underneath. But certainly maybe an exciting time for maybe new relationships, new starts, considering new starts, even in current relationships, having a bit of fun, going on an adventure. I think all of those kind of things might be good with Venus and Aries. What do you think?
Although, and we'll be talking about this for the next few months, Venus has entered the shadow of her retrograde. And so
Yes.
it's not retrograde yet. Venus isn't retrograde yet, but we may start feeling, especially with that critical Pisces energy coming in, we may start feeling ourselves pulled backwards a little bit. And things that we begin now may be subject to revision. So there is starting to be a little bit of that sense. Venus is also starting to move kind of slowly. So Aries is a very fast, fiery sign. Venus herself is actually kind of just sort of crawling along. She doesn't get very far. She usually travels much faster. So there is perhaps a little bit more of that sort of, maybe it's a bit of a wind up that, you know, will actually be released maybe in April. So we may start to see things that are going to be, issues for us or you know, issues can be good, I suppose. It doesn't sound like a very good word. But the things that are going to be up for us in relationship over the course of the next few months, really through the end of April and into May, may start to present themselves now and may, you know, we may not come to any final decision on them.
You're really saying it's kind of short-lived, so we should maybe make the most of the initial few days before she's kind of fully into that shadow and going retrograde. So maybe to have a bit of fun at this weekend, because then the energies shift again. So maybe, you know, just to go out and enjoy ourselves a little bit.
We'll have fun. You know, you can have fun anytime. If Venus is retrograde, you can go have
True.
fun. But, you know,
True.
maybe expectations a little bit, you know, a little bit tempered.
So quite an interesting week all in all, really.
It is. It's a big one.
Okay, so we'll talk again. We'll see everybody. Well, we'll talk to everybody next week again for the transits of the following week. Thanks, Armand.
See you, Margaret.